Hello guys, I'm here with the one and only John Avon. To start off with, what was your inspiration when you were younger, when you were starting out?
I originally realised when I was young. That's a very silly answer, isn't it? It's basically all I did when I was young that seemed to be of interest to me, and I seemed to be someone who enjoyed being in a different planet, on a different planet, in a different planet. And so basically I used to draw, and I found myself through making pictures. Those pictures just happened to always be rather strange. So I was aware from a very young age that my imagination wasn't quite like other people. So whereas my sister would be drawing normal things, I would end up drawing very not normal things. Hence why I do a job that's a little bit out there and unusual and wacky.
Do you sort of imagine the place where they are when you do them, or do you just sort of let your mind drift away as you're drawing them?
It's a very good question. When I am asked to do a piece or I design something from scratch, sometimes I literally see something in my mind's eye, or it's based on a dream I have. Sometimes I'll look online at bits of reference, and then I sort of cobble together almost like a collage of stuff, which I'll do digitally sometimes. But then when I'm painting it, I meld it all together. And the weird thing is, for all the work I do, I literally do feel like I'm in my paintings because I get so involved in the way they look. So I literally live inside them. It sounds really odd, but I just become part of what I do. Again, that does sound rather strange, but it's true. I just become in it, literally, because I'm looking at it for so long. And often when I stop work, I can see an imprint of the painting in my mind, so I get lost. But that's why I love doing lands, because I can lose myself in them.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense as well, because you do lands for Magic the Gathering, and because these are areas that different people, the planeswalkers, travel to. I guess that's kind of like you almost planeswalking to the land that you've designed. It's like almost becomes your area that you've planeswalked to. Is that right?
Yeah, and it's a real privilege to be able to make a living out of creating somewhere else, as in the title of my book, Journeys to Somewhere Else. We came up with this title because I was saying to Guy when we were working on the book that when I work, I literally feel like I am somewhere else, which is quite fine by me. When I watch television, I don't want to watch a real-time soap opera. I'd rather watch something like Star Trek and be off-planet, because I'm quite happy to be somewhere else. So when you're creating an image that doesn't exist, it's a very privileged thing, first of all, to be able to do that. But also it's lovely to be in a different domain and create somewhere that isn't sort of Saltdean or Brighton or London. It's somewhere that doesn't exist.
Yeah, get away from all the busy hustle and bustle and stuff and just go somewhere that's a bit more peaceful, or maybe that isn't so peaceful if you're having like a bad day.
Yeah, and I'm an extremely sensitive person. Most artists are, and it can sometimes be quite painful in the real world, and I certainly know when I was young I found it quite hard to know my purpose in life, but I recognised from a very young age that whenever I painted I felt like I was coming home again. So the gift of being an artist is that you can create somewhere to disappear into, but the curse is that often in the real world it can be quite painful because you're seeing more of reality than actually other people are. Not by choice, it just happens because you're feeling so much. Because if you think about it, you're literally paid to interpret the world in a completely different way. So I never stop working. When I'm abroad with my wife, I've always got my camera with me, and I'm seeing things that I know other people aren't seeing. I don't choose to see them, they just pop up because I interpret reality in a different way.
So that kind of answers my next question, which is all your pieces.
Ask it.
No, all your pieces are really personal pieces. Do you actually feel like a bit of? Because I always think that when you're drawing something or you're making something, because I do a little bit of artistry work myself, but it feels like a bit of your personality has gone into the artwork itself.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that is very painful on one level because though this isn't gallery work, it's very much work for the masses, and it's commercial work, which is great to have your work out there printed thousands and sometimes millions of times. But there's a side of you which is in each work. So there's a very uncomfortable dynamic between asked to do an illustration and then sending it off, and it has to be approved by a panel of people. And I've got very used to that because that's the way I earn a living. But I'm still terrified every time I send off. I've just done 2 magic cards, and they're currently being approved right now, and I don't know whether they'll go through, and I'm still as worried as ever whether they're approved because there's a little bit of me in there. Because when people like the work, you feel like the king of Siam, but if people don't like what you do, you're the absolute dog's dinner. Because you are unfortunately attached to the outcome of it being liked. So it's scary.
I understand that completely. The other thing I wanted to ask is, when you get the briefs for the lands and stuff that you do you actually get a list, so actual detailing of what they want to see, or do you literally just get most of the free reign?
No, we don't get free reign. We're given a style guide. That style guide is very tightly art directed. So take Mirrodin, for instance. The style guide for that was where everything is based on essentially metal water, metal trees, metal people within reason. So you have to interpret a landscape like, how the hell do you paint metal grass? You know, so you think, this is a challenge. Like the Ravnica that I'm looking at behind you, the Return to Ravnica, the vibe of that was sort of Gothic architecture, Prague, that kind of area. So you have free reign to express the brief yourself, but it's anchored to a style guide. So hence each set has its own identity, and if you go off that too much, you literally will be having to repaint part of it again. But the trick is to have all the problems resolved at the sketch stage. So I spend about 2 days drawing my sketches in a very detailed way, with the hope that I've convinced the art director enough that I know what I'm doing. Because if it's not right, I've wasted 2 days. But that's the way I work. I don't do a quick thumbnail sketch. I literally go for broke to convince them that this is what to do, and 90% of the time it works.
That sounds like an awesome way of starting it out. I always feel that when you're condensing something so small as well, because it's only tiny, that if you start off with something so big, it kind of adds to it, because you've got more movement, more detail in the artwork rather than just sketching something really small. Do you think the same?
Yeah, I mean, it's down to an ergonomics factor. If you imagine an A4 piece of paper or an A3 piece of paper, it's just more comfortable to draw something that is this size, but I always have to be mindful that it's brought right down to the size of a large postage stamp. So if I put in too much detail, then it literally it'll just sort of disappear in too many marks. So I have to be mindful that it works small, but also the business that I now run with Guy doing our posters, also where they've got to work massive as well. But luckily enough, because I used to paint by hand, I do all my digital work with the gestures of paint that I used to do with a brush. So my work has got a painterly quality, so I don't go for detail, I go for mood and light. And that's the thing that I try to always aspire to do, is to bring that emotive quality into everything I do, which is the light. That's why I think people tend to love my lands, because they've got an atmosphere to them which has got an emotional connection.
I think if you look up on the wall behind us, we will do a nice shot of it later, but if you look at every single one of the lands, I mean, the ones that I find stunning is this mounting here, where you actually have the light that's coming from the lava that's coming down in the pillars as well. It's beautiful. That is the thing that I always can spot your lands from anyone else's, because it is literally what you've just said. It's the light movement in it. And I think every artist has their unique thing, and I think that's definitely your unique ability, just to bring something that might be quite a dark and dismal place, and then just put a tiny light source into it, and it just shines.
For that image, it's got hope in the dark. The weird thing is, I feel more happy when I'm painting the dark images, because us artists can be quite miserable sons of bitches sometimes, and that's why I love painting swamps, because they make me feel more happy.
That kind of answers my next one. I was going to say, when you're asked to do lands, do you have a particular, because obviously there's islands, forests, plains, swamps, mountains, do you have a particular one you like painting more than you do another one, or is it literally just, whatever you feel like?
The hardest ones are plains, because essentially they're the most flat and boring, so they're the most challenging. That's why I get up very close to the grass and sort of literally as if the blade of grass is about an inch away from my viewpoint. The swamps can be a challenge, but because they're very dark, they can be quite cathartic. But I always love painting forests, because how can anyone not enjoy walking through a forest? Because you've got these almost building-like forms that are all unique but all slightly the same. Because there's lots of local forests around here, that's where I feel the most at peace. So I love painting forests if I had a choice. And the challenge is to find a different way to paint a forest. Thank you very much, and nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.